Welcome, everyone. We're very excited that you're here. Kaya and I have been working with a group of federal agency representatives for about a year now, trying to figure out how we can strengthen Arctic education and work with the community to improve Arctic education. And this was one of the ideas that we are hoping that will take off, in that we can bring the community together via IARPIC collaboration sites, and that we can talk about ways to improve all our programs. So can we pull the agenda up, please, for the questions, the discussion questions? They're kind of off the page, I think. So one of the things that we're want to talk, it's basically wide open today. We would like to know if we're trying to identify common issues among our programs. We're interested in what you might want to get out of participating in a collaborative group of this sort, what kind of challenges you face as someone supporting education projects in the Arctic. And one problem that one issue that we see for the programs that have been supported in the past was we would like to be able to improve the way we engage rural and Alaska Native participants in Arctic STEM programs, and maybe figure out better ways to address issues that are of relevance to these communities. So these are some of the questions that we're hoping to discuss today, but if you have other questions that you would like to bring up, we're happy to talk about them as well. So let's start with some of the first two on what you might get out of this group and maybe some of your challenges. Do I have a volunteer to weigh in here?
Sure, hang on, I was unmuting the button there. Again, Mike Catalini. So I'm most fascinated today to sit and talk about options from what you and Kai and I have talked before, and we've been at many of the same meetings before. Interested in the perspectives from IARPIC side, in sort of a compare and contrast to the efforts that we have through University of the Arctic, which has also obviously the goals of educational and issues across all the member nations that belong in that. And we're up to about 200 institutions now, in everything from endorsed programs to moving students back and forth, and a whole variety of things. And next week in Canada, UArctic is having a thematic networks meeting, which is a fancy word for working groups. And our office is going to be represented there by people working with the thematic networks to enhance their educational components of those are usually research networks, enhance the educational components of it. So right now I don't have a particular goal for this meeting. It's the first time I've been in an IARPIC meeting specifically looking at this. And so I'll listen and jump in that I can, because we have a whole list of parts of the strategic plans, operations, a whole variety of issues that deal with Arctic education through those 200 institutions and across the various countries. So I'm going to listen for a bit, but just to give you the background of that on where I'm coming from. And it's easy for me to upload to you guys, once I find out how to do that, to IARPIC, some of the strategic plans and operations and goals for UArctic educational programs. So easy for me to do, but I don't want to take time learning how to do that now. I'll talk to you later about that, but easy to make those connections. So I just wanted to sort of update you at that point, and then I'll sit and listen here.
Thank you. Actually, Mike, that brings up a great point, which is that education in the Arctic is international.
Right.
And that a lot of the efforts that we are working on have many other countries and many other nations interested in these issues. So that's a great point. Thank you. Anyone else?
And so I'll just throw one last thing. One of our goals is to actually enhance it in the United States, which of all the Arctic nations is the least Arctic, so to speak. And so we're trying to figure out how to enhance Arctic education opportunities in the United States itself. That is also one of our tasks.
Hi, this is Serena Stala. So I'm really interested in hearing about how different institutions are approaching STEM, but particularly how the current workforce can engage in STEM education and emerging STEM education models, and where there are opportunities to kind of leverage the strengths of existing programs and connect existing models for maximum impact.
Thank you. That's another great point. When you talk about the workforce, do you have a particular, are you thinking undergraduates or graduate students or all of K-12, all of the above? Do you have a particular focus?
So my particular focus is currently undergraduate students, but I'm interested in all of the above, and also looking how we can connect the different, undergraduate programs to potentially graduate programs and create more of a pathway there, and even connect down to earlier ages as well. But like I said, my current focus is undergraduate, but definitely interested in all levels.
Great, thanks. Anyone else?
Hi, in the chat box, Renee Tedesco shared. Renee, do you want to mute yourself and go ahead and share your question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. So we have had some engagement with Sandia Laboratories, National Laboratories, which is a DOE-supported facility located up there at UAF. And they are standing up a research facility in Oluktuk Point. And when my director had conducted an interview with Arctic Today, he brought up the notion of a broader U.S.-Canadian effort with Polar Knowledge Canada. So the question I asked in the chat was, is there an opportunity for this team to engage with Polar Knowledge Canada and the program that they've stood up at the Canadian High Arctic Research Station in Cambridge Bay? I would imagine, although I have not seen their strategic plan or implementation plan, but I would imagine there is some sort of a STEM component, because I do know that they have a robust engagement with the Inuit communities in that area. So I'm just wondering if this presents an opportunity as part of the Sandia effort to establish a partnership with Polar Knowledge Canada on this STEM team. Thanks.
Yes, I think that would be something that we could do. I'm going to ask Sarah to address the IARPIC mandate, I suppose.
Yeah, so Renee, great observation. And I think we want not only to engage just across the United States, but more broadly internationally. And I think this ties in with the comments that Mike made earlier, there are a lot of really good efforts that we know that are existing in other countries. And can we leverage those? Can we learn from those? You know, find ways of sharing and collaborating with international efforts. The IARPC mandate is to coordinate federally funded research within the United States, but doing so in collaboration with other countries, the state of Alaska, indigenous peoples, and so forth. So the mandate definitely extends to include international participation. And many of our collaboration teams do include international participants.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Anyone else want to bring up any issues?
Lisa, this is Kaya. Maybe just one thing to add to that I thought as Renee was bringing up the Polar Knowledge Canada efforts is as some of these conversations have evolved, we've also been talking about whether we can think about a model for STEM education in the Arctic that could be perpetuated across Pan-Arctic arenas. So I just wanted to put that out on the table for people who already are working in that in this arena, and for new initiatives that are happening. I think we're at a pretty good juncture to look at what's going on and still have opportunities to influence the future efforts that happen either US-based or Pan-Arctic. And the idea of a model that could be generated from various efforts and people's thinkings on this, I think could be very useful to our own work in the US, but also to us trying to extend our collaborations across the other Arctic countries.
This is Janet from ARCUS, and the reason why I'm part of this group is I had a career of STEM education in the Arctic, and but also I'm representing ARCUS in the sense that our interests are trying to bring people like all of you that have different issues and kind of see where the gaps are and figure out the best ways to, similar to IARPC's, I guess, overall mission, you know, figuring out how you can engage and collaborate and share these different things that everybody's learning, and just really leverage one another and others that might not be part of the conversation. So for my particular role in this group, that's what I'm looking at, is where are the gaps, what are the issues that you're bringing up, and how does ARCUS fit into the picture and help you bridge those gaps, and what kinds of tools can we think about to help strengthen those collaborations and close those gaps. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yes, this is Ross, Virginia here. I think one of the areas that I'm particularly interested in, and Mike Castellini sort of spoke to it at the start, is how we better connect the international networks that are out there, that are working across the Arctic at different levels, research, education, and outreach. University Arctic is perhaps the best model of that, and I'm very engaged in that network along with Mike. There's also the Fulbright Arctic Initiative program, which is bringing scholars together from across the Arctic for research, but it's a very highly visible program within the State Department, and there are opportunities for outreach and engagement and produce materials that are useful for STEM. And then also, Lauren Culler and I, with generous support from NSF, have been working for quite a while now in Greenland. And a major effort there is to better directly connect US research to the needs of Greenland society, but in the process to help US researchers function more effectively in Greenland, to bring in more students from the US, but also to be working in ways in which our presence improves education within Greenland. So just trying to figure out what are the opportunities, what are some of the best practices, and how can we connect all these networks a little more effectively. And so I'm very pleased with this effort because I think this structure and what Lisa's talking about here could be very, very effective in that. So thank you.
So this is Marilyn Sigmund, and I had the opportunity to work with Lisa Rahm. So sorry, I think I talked over Katie Spellman. Sorry, Katie. This is Marilyn Sigmund, and I had the opportunity to work with Lisa Rahm on a COSI project funded by NSF, the Center for Ocean Science Education Excellence. And the theme of that was the intersection of Western science and traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge. And so I think I'm still very interested in the intersection of STEM education with indigenous knowledge and how outreach from the science projects can effectively be outreach to indigenous students in STEM.
Thanks. And Katie, are you on? Katie, you're muted if you're talking. All right, anyone else want to bring up issues?
Hello, my name is Maida Chobadihas. I didn't have a chance to introduce myself. At the beginning, I came in a little late. I'm an instructor of anthropology at the Des Moines Area Community College, and I'm also a visiting scientist at the Arctic Center of the University of Northern Iowa. So my perspective is a little different. Since I'm teaching a large number of undergraduates in the first 2 years of their educations, my goal is, and also I think the advantages of working in a community college, that we reach a lot of students. And so I'm interested in teaching about the Arctic. How can we enhance that? Especially how can we connect some of our students to Arctic networks on the undergraduate level and provide them hands-on community engaged education experiences.
This is Katie. I'm sorry, I was doing the drop-offs of all the kids this morning, and I joined in right when Mike was speaking. And I guess that my interests are aligned with Marilyn's, the points that she made about making sure that we are best serving our Indigenous students and Indigenous communities, and making sure that we do it in a culturally responsive manner.
Hi, this is Louise Huffman. I guess I come from a little bit different background, and since I'm representing the Ice Core drilling community and their STEM efforts, what my main output is the School of Ice, and we work with community college and four-year college faculty members who are teaching about climate change and want to know more about ice core science. And they're from minority serving colleges. So one of the connections that I saw right away was perhaps there are indigenous colleges in the Arctic. They'd have to be US colleges, I think, but if they're US Arctic colleges, maybe they could come to a School of Ice workshop, and maybe through this group I'd be able to find those people that might be interested in something like that. We also do a lot of development of resources for teaching ice core science, engineering, drilling, and climate change science for probably grades 5 to college, and can also provide scientists to speak to groups, not traveling, but they could Skype into groups or classrooms. So just some quick thoughts on things like that. We're also doing a pilot program, excuse me, at the School of Ice in June where we're bringing a couple of high school teachers with community college teachers to the School of Ice to discuss whether the workshop would work well for helping high school teachers bridge the gap to community college for students from minority backgrounds who might not think about college or think about STEM courses. And so that's a kind of a non-funded pilot on the back burner right now of School of Ice. So just some thoughts that came to me as you all were talking.
Thank you, Louise. Anyone else?
Sarah, it's Martin. Just quickly to repeat what I mentioned earlier, that I'm with CREL, the Cold Regions Research and Engineering Lab in Hanover, New Hampshire, and we're a research and engineering lab, but we do have an education component in as much as we host undergraduates, primarily during the summer as interns to gain science, engineering, and research experience. Graduate students throughout the year, working with CREL scientists and engineers, often pursuing their dissertation research with the CREL scientists and engineers who sit on the students' committees. We've had a long-standing relationship with Dartmouth College and hosting particularly Dartmouth students. And we host postdocs who are sort of in that transition from education and research into research full-time. And we have a growing relationship with other universities and colleges in the New England region, University of New Hampshire, for example, University of Vermont, Norwich University, that's also in Vermont, and so on. So, and we enter into education partnership agreements with the educational institutions. This is Department of Defense, it's government, so some people feel we must have formal written and signed agreements, and that's what these educational partnership agreements are. But so it's a formal way of establishing that relationship and what each side brings to the joint effort, and so on. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm also here to listen to what others have to say and learn and think about other ways that CREL could engage in providing educational opportunities and contributing to the overall education effort. I'm relatively new at CREL. I've been here in Hanover for only a little over 8 months, and I'm still learning about CREL, about our parent organization, the Engineer Research and Development Center, which is the R&D arm of the US Army Corps of Engineers. And through that, then we have our tentacles, if you will, into DOD and the Office of the Secretary of Defense, etc. And so I'm still learning about what I think are many potential education opportunities that we at CREL could tap into, and through that contribute to the IARPIC effort. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Martin. So I'm going to summarize a little bit about what we've done, and if anyone didn't get to speak who wanted to speak, please send a message in the chat box, and I'll ask for final comments in a minute. But just to summarize what we've heard so far, I hear there are lots of undergraduate, there's a focus on undergraduate research experiences or undergraduate education, including community colleges. There's an interest in indigenous education in groups, there's a international focus. What are the international opportunities, and where can we connect with other nations and other countries? And there are, I think one of the things that is really interesting is that I heard about a lot of things that a lot of opportunities that I wasn't aware of. And so that's one of the things that a network of this sort can do. It can give wider notice of the resources and the opportunities that are available that are out there for students and for teachers and for faculty members to participate in, that people might not know about. So somehow we need to figure out a way to capture all of this information and perhaps make it more widely accessible, so that we're not all operating in isolation. So, and with that, I'm going to ask if there were anyone did anyone send a chat about wanting to say something?
This is Susan. I just added something to the chat about there's a special call for papers for the Journal of Geoscience Education devoted to polar education. I just thought it might be of interest to people.
Great, thank you. Yes, that is another opportunity out there. There's going to be a special issue of Geoscience Ed, and it will focus on the Arctic. All right. We also want to make everyone aware of a possible meeting or workshop. And Kaya, are you going to talk about that? Kaya, I think you're muted.
Yes, I was. Thanks, Lisa. I just noted here that I see Harry Stern had put a chat comment in the chat box if people haven't seen his comment about a science show on the Arctic, or polar science show at the planetarium in Seattle Pacific Science Center. So thanks, Lisa. I will use the last question in the discussion questions as a bit of a segue into item number 4 on the agenda. And that last question is one that has been discussed a little bit in various arenas, and also people have noted here the participation and interest in Indigenous communities and how we serve Indigenous communities or are responsive to Indigenous communities' needs. So in particular for the Arctic, we are interested in how we might better engage rural and Alaska Native participants in Arctic STEM and what the challenges are to doing so. That is something that we then thought might be useful to hold a meeting or workshop around that question. So we, as this IARPC Arctic STEM group, are going to launch that meeting next February, timeframe approximately next February. We are looking at holding that around the Alaska Forum on the Environment, although we have had some discussions about that amongst a small working group as to whether that would be the best venue and timing, but that can be determined at a later date. So the intent of this meeting is to bring together the program managers from the federal agencies that have some program or investment in Arctic STEM, together with the PIs who are working on an Arctic STEM topic, and community members in Alaska who may be interested in how their own communities can be better represented in the Arctic STEM arenas. The format we're looking at is probably 1.5 to 2 days. And the idea would be really to bring people together to exchange the different perspectives on the challenges that we all face, the kinds of opportunities that are there, and discuss the needs from different perspectives, the different arena perspectives, and also from the community perspective. So we are in the process of developing the format for that and getting ourselves organized to be looking at when, where, and who. One of the things that we'd like to do is form a small steering committee for this effort. There are several people on this call who are working on that effort. Janet Warburton from ARCUS and Serena Stala and Megan Hilgartner. And if we have interest from people on this group to be part of a small steering committee that guides the people working on this to make it happen, that would be helpful. If you are one of those people and you want to email me directly, you can do that. If you are one of those people and want to offer some comments here or offer up your interest, that would also be very helpful. And then I will just organize that and connect the pieces of the organization components together with the steering committee. We have a few federal arenas involved in this, NSF, NOAA, NIH in particular, who have big programs in Arctic STEM in Alaska. And of course, there are others as well, but just to give you a little bit of the federal landscape there. So I'll just stop at that point and see if there are any comments about this initiative, and if there is any specific interest that you might have in what you'd like to see happen within that context, and or whether you might have particular interest in being part of this steering committee.
Kaya, this is Mike with West Virginia. And hello, Ross, being on the board of governors for UArctic, and both of us listening, and the monthly meetings that the groups have. I will bring this up to the next Secretariat meeting that we have virtually and then physically, and then the two of us can probably work with you on some sort of response or effort, and or people to be on steering committees, things like that from UArctic. But Ross and I will work on that, and I'll work on this with the Secretariat also.
That's great. Thank you, Mike and Ross.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any thoughts, comments around this idea?
Marilyn and Janet, did you guys already talk about the meeting on this very topic that we had last week with the bunch of representatives from across Alaska? Did you guys already mention that?
We did.
Okay, good.
So we hope that will inform and our Janet's on the steering committee. So the thought is that what we discuss will inform this meeting that's coming up in February.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thanks, Katie and Marilyn. We met among the small group that I mentioned, Janet, Serena, and Megan and I, the other day, and we realized that there are other efforts out there that have looked in some form at this topic, and we're looking at how we might create a resource platform that pulls from those efforts and the information that was produced from those efforts to feed into this particular effort. So that might be a little bit of intensive work, looking at background resources such as the ones that you have just mentioned, both in Alaska and what Mike was referring to with the Arctic. So we'll do some work on that to pull that together so that we kind of don't reinvent what everyone has already engaged in, but can push forward from that.
Hello, this is Maida Diaz again. I kind of thought about this. Since it's going to be in Anchorage, it would be perhaps nice to reach out the Alaska Native Studies Department at UAA and the leadership there, and they would be able to help to reach the 12 regional corporations, cultural and educational programs and their leadership, so they can be directly invited. And that would be a great way of learning about all the different projects that are going on already in regions and communities and how they can be connected, or, you know, future interests.
That's great. Thanks, Mega, for offering that. Any other thoughts? Well, okay, well, thanks everyone for your contributions on that idea. If you, after this call, would like to get in touch with me, please do so. My email address is kaya.bricks@noaa.gov. You can probably find that online searching as well. I'll put it in the chat box. And we'll keep everyone here posted as we move forward on this effort. I'll turn it back over to Lisa.
Hey, thanks, Kaya, and thanks, everyone. I'm going to ask if there are any last comments anyone want to make?
So Lisa, sometime in most of our meetings at the end, we try to offer a little bit of time just for closing comments, but in particular, if you want to share any information about upcoming events or programs or activities that your institution is undertaking, this is a good time to do that. Of course, in this meeting, it was all discussion, so I think many of those have already been shared, but usually in our meetings there is a presentation, and so we just offer this time at the end to share out any upcoming events or things that you want to share with the community. Thanks. One other thing that I will note is that thank you, Renee Tedesco, for some good comments in the chat box. We'll capture those, and they will go into the meeting notes, which will be posted. Probably not real soon, because we have a big workshop next week that is going to take up the Secretariat's time, so probably the following week. Jessica's sharing her screen, and at the bottom of the screen you'll see that comment box. This is a great way for keeping the conversation going, and you can offer any additional input or ideas that you have through this comment box, and those are then shared out. If you want to ensure that somebody sees it, you can tag them in that comment box, and they will get an email to notify them that they have been mentioned in a post. So if you want to reach out to Kaya or Lisa, this is a great way to do it.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. All right, well, this was a very good introductory meeting. I think we have lots of possible ideas and directions to go. I got a couple of good ideas that I'm gonna pursue here, so I hope everyone else did as well. Please do keep the Journal of Geoscience Education issue for polar education on your radar. And the workshop next February on your radar, and we'll try to do some more sharing of resources and events in the future. So stay posted for our next meeting. Anyone else want to have last comments?
Sure. I just wanted to thank you all again for bringing us all together. It's great to hear about the different work that everyone's doing in the realm of Arctic STEM diversity and education. And one thing I just wanted to put out there is that Serena and I are in the process of implementing a pilot of an education workforce entry model for NOAA Alaska region. And we are focusing on undergraduates, and this year we have 5 students, 3 of which are Alaska Native or from a rural community, and 2 of the other ones are also from underserved communities. And so we're excited to be part of this, to learn about these different efforts that are happening and to share with you all what we're learning as well. So thank you again.
Fabulous. We'll have to hear more about that soon. All right. We will try to be respectful of everyone's time and end a few minutes early. One last question, Serena. Was that funded by, what organization is supporting that?
Sorry, this is Megan. That is funded by NOAA. Yeah.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Megan, that would, I don't know if you're a member of IARPIC collaborations, but how to join and how to post on the website. It would be really interesting to add a post about that to the website to share more widely with the community. This group, we've had 20 people on this call, which is fantastic. The notes and everything get shared with over 2,000 people on our website. And so it is a really good tool for getting information out to the community about programs because not everybody can join a call, but they can learn through the website about programs if you post about them.
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent idea. We'll be sure to do that, to share.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks everyone. We really appreciate your participation today, and we hope to see you at our next meeting. We're going to try to hold these every few months. We don't have a schedule yet, but as soon as we do, we will post it on the IARPIC website.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.